I'll never forget the look on Mark Davidson's face when I walked into his corner office 6 months later, holding the signed contracts that would bankrupt Pinnacle Marketing Solutions. The same man who'd called me into that sterile conference room on my wedding day, telling me I was being terminated for poor performance while my bridesmaids were getting their hair done 3 blocks away. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The morning of October 15th started like a fairy tale. I woke up in the bridal suite at the Fairmont Olympic Hotel, sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Elliott Bay. My wedding dress hung pristine and perfect on the mahogany armoire, and I could hear my bridesmaids laughing in the adjoining room as they prepared for what was supposed to be the most beautiful day of my life. I was Sarah Chen, 29 years old, and after 5 years of grinding my way up from junior marketing coordinator to director of client strategy at Pinnacle Marketing Solutions, I thought I had everything figured out. My phone buzzed as I sipped my morning coffee, still in my silk pajamas with Sarah Bride embroidered across the chest, a gift from my maid of honor, Lisa Rodriguez. The caller ID showed Jessica Thompson, my direct supervisor and VP of marketing. I almost didn't answer. Who calls someone on their wedding day at 7 in the morning? But Jessica had been my mentor for 3 years, the woman who'd fought for my promotions and trusted me with the company's biggest accounts. I couldn't ignore her. "Sarah, I'm so sorry to bother you today." Jessica's voice sounded strained, almost guilty. "But Mark needs to see you in the office immediately. There's been a situation with the Northwest Tech account, and we need damage control before the weekend." My stomach dropped. Northwest Tech Industries was our largest client, a contract worth $3 million annually that I'd personally managed for 18 months. The relationship was solid. Their quarterly results had exceeded expectations by 40% under my strategy, and their CEO, Tom Bradley, had personally praised my work just last week. What situation could possibly require my attention on my wedding day? "Jessica, my ceremony starts at 4. Can't this wait until Monday? I'm supposed to be getting married in 9 hours." I tried to keep the panic out of my voice, but my hands were already shaking as I set down my coffee cup. I know, and I'm sick about asking this of you. But Mark is insistent. He said if you can't handle a crisis situation, maybe you're not director material after all. Just come in for an hour, we'll sort this out, and you'll be back in time for your hair appointment. I promise. The threat was subtle but clear. Mark Davidson, our CEO, had a reputation for making or breaking careers based on moments like these. He'd built Pinnacle Marketing Solutions from a 2-person startup into Seattle's premier digital marketing agency, but his management style was legendary for its ruthlessness. Cross Mark Davidson, and you'd find yourself blacklisted from every major agency in the Pacific Northwest. I'd watched it happen to 3 colleagues over the years. "I'll be there in 30 minutes, I said, already moving toward my closet to find something professional to wear before changing into my wedding dress. Lisa appeared in the doorway, her dark hair half-curled and her makeup artist's brush in hand. "Who was that? Please tell me David isn't getting cold feet." She'd been my roommate at University of Washington and my closest friend for 8 years. She knew me well enough to recognize crisis mode. "Work emergency. I have to go to the office for an hour." I pulled on a navy blazer over dark jeans, trying to look professional without completely abandoning the relaxed wedding morning vibe. "Sarah, no, absolutely not. It's your wedding day. Whatever it is can wait." Lisa's voice carried the authority of someone who'd spent 4 years as a social worker dealing with crisis situations. "You've given that company everything for 5 years. They can survive one day without you." "I can't risk it, Liz. Mark specifically said this was a test of my director capabilities. I've worked too hard to get where I am." I was already grabbing my purse and car keys, my mind racing through possible scenarios with Northwest Tech. Had their new product launch failed? Was there a PR crisis I hadn't heard about? The drive from downtown Seattle to our offices in the Columbia Center should have taken 15 minutes, but Saturday morning traffic was lighter than usual. I found myself in the elevator to the 15th floor faster than I'd hoped, giving me less time to prepare for whatever crisis awaited. The Pinnacle Marketing Solutions offices were eerily quiet, with only a few lights on in the reception area and executive wing. Jessica met me at the elevator, her usually immaculate appearance slightly disheveled. She'd been at Pinnacle for 7 years, climbing from account coordinator to VP through sheer determination and brilliant strategic thinking. She was everything I aspired to become, which made her obvious discomfort even more unsettling. "Sarah, before we go in there, I need you to know that I fought against this. I told Mark it was inappropriate timing, but he insisted." She wouldn't. Meet my eyes as we walked toward the conference room where light spilled through the frosted glass walls. Fought against what? What exactly is going on with Northwest Tech? But even as I asked the question, a cold dread was settling in my stomach. This didn't feel like a client crisis. This felt like something much worse. The conference room contained 3 people. Mark Davidson sat at the head of the polished mahogany table, his silver hair perfectly styled despite the early hour. Amanda Foster from Human Resources occupied the chair to his left, a thick folder, open in front of her. And slouched in the chair across from them, looking remarkably smug for 7:30 on a Saturday morning, was Ryan Mitchell. Ryan had joined Pinnacle 8 months ago as a senior account manager, hired away from a competing agency with promises of rapid advancement. From day one, he'd made it clear that he considered my director position to be rightfully his. He was 31, 2 years older than me, with an MBA from Wharton and connections throughout Seattle's business community that he leveraged at every opportunity. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. He was also everything I'd learned to distrust in corporate America. Ambitious without being capable, charming without being genuine, and ruthless without being effective. "Sarah, please sit down." Mark's voice carried the same tone he used during client presentations when he was about to deliver bad news. "I'm afraid we have some serious concerns about your performance that need to be addressed immediately." My heart stopped. Performance concerns? I'd exceeded every metric for 18 months straight. My client retention rate was 97%. My campaigns had generated over $15 million in revenue for clients, and I'd personally brought in 4 new accounts worth a combined $3.8 million annually. What performance concerns could he possibly have? "I'm not sure I understand," I managed, taking the seat across from Amanda Foster while trying to maintain professional composure. "All of my client accounts are performing above expectations. I just received the Q3 reports yesterday, and every KPI shows significant growth." Ryan leaned forward with the expression that could only be described as predatory. "That's actually part of the problem, Sarah. Your success has been built on relationships and strategies that belong to Pinnacle, not to you personally. We've discovered that you've been using company resources and client information to build your own consulting business on the side." The accusation hit me like a physical blow. Yes, I had started Stellar Digital Strategies 18 months ago as a freelance consulting business, working nights and weekends with small local businesses that Pinnacle would never consider as clients. Coffee shops, boutique retailers, local nonprofits that needed digital marketing help but couldn't afford our minimum contract requirements. It was completely separate from my Pinnacle work, using my own equipment, my own time, and clients that would never compete with our business. "That's completely false," I said, my voice steady despite the rage building inside me. Stellar Digital Strategies works exclusively with small businesses that fall below Pinnacle's minimum contract threshold. There's no conflict of interest, no misuse of company resources, and certainly no theft of client information. Mark's expression remained neutral, but I caught a flicker of something that might have been disappointment in his eyes. "Sarah, we've conducted a thorough investigation. Ryan brought some concerning information to our attention about your outside activities. Phone calls made during business hours, client meetings scheduled during lunch breaks, and most seriously, the use of strategic frameworks and methodologies that you developed while employed by Pinnacle. Amanda Foster opened her folder and slid a document across the table. This is a termination letter citing breach of your employment agreement, specifically the non-compete clause and intellectual property provisions. Your employment with Pinnacle Marketing Solutions is terminated effective immediately. The words hit me like ice water. Terminated. On my wedding day. For accusations that were not only false, but demonstrably ridiculous to anyone who actually understood my work. I stared at the letter, seeing my name typed in corporate font alongside phrases like poor performance, violation of company policy, and immediate termination without severance. This is insane, I said, looking directly at Jessica, who had remained silent throughout the entire exchange. You know my work, you know my clients, you know that everything I've built here has been legitimate and profitable. How can you sit there and let this happen? Jessica finally met my eyes, and I saw something that chilled me more than Mark's accusations or Ryan's smugness. I saw guilt, and in that moment, I realized that this wasn't about performance or company policy. This was about something else entirely. Sarah, I'm sorry, but the evidence is compelling. Ryan has documentation showing that you've been soliciting Pinnacle clients for your side business, using company email systems for personal gain, and violating the intellectual property agreements you signed when you were promoted to director. Jessica's voice was barely above a whisper. Ryan reached into his briefcase and produced a manila folder thick with printed emails, phone records, and what appeared to be financial documents. I've been tracking Sarah's activities for several months. Phone calls to clients during business hours, meetings at coffee shops near our office building, and most damaging email communications that clearly show her attempting to steal Northwest Tech Industries as a client for her own business. My vision went red. That's impossible because it never happened. I have never, not once, attempted to solicit any Pinnacle client for my business. You're lying, and you know you're lying. But even as I spoke, I realized the trap that had been set for me. Ryan had been watching me, documenting my every move, and somehow manufacturing evidence that would be impossible to disprove in a Saturday morning ambush meeting. The timing wasn't coincidental. They'd chosen my wedding day specifically because they knew I'd be emotional, unprepared, and unable to mount an effective defense. Mark stood up, his expression resolving into the cold professionalism that had made him legendary in Seattle's business community. Sarah, I'm going to be direct with you. Your talent has never been in question. Your work ethic and client relationships have been exemplary. But trust is the foundation of our business. And we can no longer trust that your loyalty lies with Pinnacle Marketing Solutions. Based on what evidence? Ryan's word? Fabricated documents that anyone could create? I stood up as well, meeting his gaze directly. Mark, you've known me for 5 years. You've watched me build relationships, exceed targets, and contribute to this company's growth. Are you really going to destroy my career based on the accusations of someone who's been here for 8 months? Amanda Foster cleared her throat. Sarah, you have the right to appeal this decision through our standard HR processes. However, given the nature of the allegations, we need you to surrender your company equipment, access cards, and any materials related to Pinnacle clients immediately. The full scope of what was happening crashed over me like a tsunami. They weren't just firing me. They were destroying my reputation, eliminating my ability to work in my chosen field, and doing it all on the day that was supposed to be the happiest of my life. In 6 hours, I was supposed to be walking down the aisle at St. Mark's Cathedral to marry David Chen, the man who'd supported my career ambitions and celebrated every professional victory with me. Instead, I was being escorted from my office, building like a common criminal. I want to see the evidence, I said, reaching for Ryan's folder. "If you're going to ruin my life, at least show me what you think you have." Ryan pulled the folder back with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I'm afraid that's confidential company information now, part of an ongoing investigation." And there it was, the final piece of the puzzle. This wasn't about evidence or performance or company policy. This was about Ryan Mitchell positioning himself to take over my accounts, my relationships, and my position. He'd orchestrated this entire scenario, knowing that Mark Davidson's paranoia about employee loyalty would override any rational evaluation of my actual performance. Jessica finally spoke, her voice barely audible. "Sarah, I'm so sorry. This isn't how I wanted this to go." I looked at her, this woman I'd trusted and admired, and realized that she'd been complicit in my destruction. Whether through cowardice or calculation, she'd allowed this to happen when she could have stopped. No, Jessica, you're not sorry. If you were sorry, you would have warned me. You would have given me a chance to defend myself. You would have demanded real evidence before agreeing to destroy someone's career. I gathered my purse and stood, up, straightening my blazer with as much dignity as I could muster. "Your access cards and company phone, please," Amanda Foster said, extending her hand. I placed my security badge and iPhone on the table, along with the keys to my company car. "I assume someone will be in touch about my personal belongings in my office." "We'll have them packed and delivered to your address on file," Amanda replied, with the mechanical efficiency of someone who'd overseen many terminations. As I walked toward the conference room door, Ryan's voice stopped me. "Sarah, for what?" "It's worth. You're genuinely talented. I'm sure you'll land on your feet somewhere." I turned back to face him, meeting his eyes with every ounce of steel I'd developed over 5 years in corporate marketing. "Ryan, you have no idea what you've just started, but you're about to find out." The elevator ride to the lobby felt like descending into hell. I stood alone in the polished steel box, watching the floor numbers decrease while my career and reputation imploded around me. When the doors opened into the marble lobby of the Columbia Center, I walked out into a completely different world than the one I'd entered 45 minutes earlier. My phone buzzed with a text from Lisa. "Hair and makeup team is here. Where are you? Everything okay?" I stared at the message, trying to process how I was going to explain that the bride wouldn't be needing hair and makeup because she'd just been professionally destroyed by her colleagues. How do you tell your best friend that your fairy tale wedding day had turned into a corporate nightmare? How do you explain that while she was preparing for the most beautiful day of your life, you were being systematically character assassinated by people you'd trusted? Another text appeared. "David is getting worried. He tried calling, but it went to voicemail. Text me back." David, my fiancé of 2 years, the man who'd proposed on a hiking trail overlooking Mount Rainier because he knew I loved the way the city looked small and manageable from that height. David worked as a software engineer at a startup downtown, building applications that helped small businesses manage their customer relationships. He was kind, brilliant, and completely unprepared for the woman he was about to marry to become, unemployed and potentially unemployable in her chosen field. I stood on the sidewalk outside the Columbia Center, watching Seattle's Saturday morning unfold around me. Tourists walked toward Pike Place Market with cameras and coffee cups. Young professionals in athletic wear headed toward the waterfront for morning runs. Normal people living normal lives, completely unaware that mine had just detonated in a corporate conference room 15 floors above their heads. My career at Pinnacle Marketing Solutions was over, destroyed by accusations I couldn't defend against and evidence I wasn't allowed to examine. But as I stood there in my navy blazer and wedding day jewelry, something crystallized in my mind with absolute clarity. Ryan Mitchell had made one critical mistake in his otherwise flawless assassination of my professional reputation. He had no idea what stellar digital strategies had really become. While he'd been busy tracking my coffee shop meetings and phone calls, documenting what he thought was a small side business, he'd missed the real story entirely. Stellar Digital Strategies wasn't just a freelance consulting operation. Over 18 months of nights and weekends, working from my spare bedroom turned office, I'd built something that would have impressed even Mark Davidson's entrepreneurial instincts. My client list included 47 businesses across the Pacific Northwest. Not small mom-and-pop shops struggling to stay afloat, but growing companies that were scaling rapidly and needed sophisticated digital marketing strategies. Cascade Coffee Company had grown from 3 locations to 12 under my guidance, with online sales increasing by 340%. Pacific Northwest Wellness had expanded into 2 new markets and doubled their subscription base. Emerald City Real Estate had become the fastest-growing residential agency in King County. More importantly, every single one of these clients had contracts that extended well beyond anything Pinnacle offered their much larger corporate accounts. I'd built relationships based on results, not just proposals. I'd developed marketing, frameworks that were generating millions in revenue for businesses that traditional agencies had written off as too small to matter. And now, thanks to Ryan Mitchell's corporate coup, I was free to pursue those relationships full-time without any non-compete restrictions or conflicts of interest. Because Pinnacle Marketing Solutions had just terminated me for cause, specifically for supposedly stealing clients that they'd never actually wanted in the first place. I pulled out my personal phone and opened my contacts list, scrolling through names that represented not just clients, but genuine business relationships built on trust and results. Tom Bradley from Northwest Tech Industries, who'd mentioned 3 times in recent weeks that Pinnacle's account management had become impersonal and metrics-focused. Patricia Yamamoto from Summit Financial Group, who'd specifically asked if I ever did independent consulting because she was frustrated with her current agency's lack of creativity. The list went on and on. Decision-makers at companies worth millions in annual revenue, people who'd worked with me directly and seen the results I could deliver when I wasn't constrained by Pinnacle's bureaucratic processes and profit margin requirements. My phone rang and Lisa's face appeared on the screen. I answered while walking toward the parking garage where I'd left my car. "Sarah, where are you? The photographer wants to start getting ready shots in 20 minutes and you're not here. What happened at the office?" I took a deep breath, trying to figure out how to explain that my wedding day had become the first day of my new career. "Liz, I need you to sit down for this." "I'm already sitting. Hair chair. Spill." "I just got fired. Terminated for cause. On my wedding day." The silence stretched for nearly 10 seconds before Lisa's voice exploded through the phone. "They did what? Those absolute monsters. Sarah, tell me you're joking. Please tell me this is some kind of horrible mistake." "No mistake. They ambushed me in a conference room with fabricated evidence and accusations that I can't defend against. Ryan Mitchell orchestrated the whole thing to take over my accounts and position." "Okay, first of all, Ryan Mitchell can eat glass. Second, we're calling David right now and postponing the wedding until we figure this out. Third, I'm personally going to destroy everyone involved in this travesty." "No, Liz, we're not postponing anything." I was surprised by the firmness in my own voice. "I'm getting married today exactly as planned, because while they think they've destroyed my career, they've actually just freed me to build something much bigger." I reached my car and sat in the driver's seat, looking back up at the Columbia Center where my former colleagues were probably celebrating their successful character assassination. Ryan Mitchell has no idea what he's just unleashed, but he's about to find out that when you try to destroy someone who's already built something better, you end up destroying yourself instead. The drive back to the Fairmont Olympic Hotel gave me time to process the magnitude of what had just happened and what I was about to do. By the time I walked back into the bridal suite, I'd made peace with the fact that my wedding day would forever be remembered as the day my old life ended and my real life began. Lisa took one look at my face and immediately understood that everything had changed. "Okay, bride, tell me exactly what we're dealing with and how we're going to handle it." And as I sat down in the makeup chair, still wearing the navy blazer I'd thrown on for my corporate execution, I began to smile for the first time that morning. Because while Mark Davidson and Ryan Mitchell thought they'd checkmated me in their corporate chess game, they'd actually just freed their most dangerous competitor to play by entirely different rules. The wedding would go on as planned, but the revenge would be served at a much more elegant temperature. The bridal suite at the Fairmont Olympic Hotel buzzed with nervous energy as I tried to explain to my wedding party why the bride had just returned from what was supposed to be a 1-hour emergency meeting, looking like she'd witnessed a corporate murder. Lisa Rodriguez, my maid of honor and the most fiercely loyal person I'd ever known, sat cross-legged on the plush carpet in her silk robe, alternating between rage and disbelief as I recounted every detail of my termination. "Let me get this straight," said my sister Claire, who'd flown in from Portland to be a bridesmaid. "They called you in on your wedding day, ambushed you with fake evidence, and fired you based on the word of some guy who's been there for 8 months." Claire worked as a labor attorney, and her legal mind was already processing the potential lawsuits and wrongful termination claims. "It gets worse," I continued, pulling pins from my hair that I'd hastily styled for the office visit. Ryan Mitchell had been tracking my movements for months, building a case based on completely legitimate business activities that he twisted into corporate espionage. And Jessica Thompson, my supposed mentor, sat there and let it happen. My youngest bridesmaid, Kayla Patel, looked up from where she was steaming my wedding dress. "But why today? Why your wedding day specifically? That seems deliberately cruel." Because they knew I'd be emotional and unprepared. They knew I wouldn't have access to my files or evidence to defend myself. They chose today because they thought it would maximize the damage and minimize my ability to fight back. I moved to the window overlooking Elliott Bay, watching the ferries glide across the gray-blue water. What they didn't count on was that they'd actually be setting me free. Lisa stood up, her dark eyes flashing with the protective fury I'd seen her direct at incompetent social services bureaucrats and negligent foster parents during her work. "Sarah, I love you, but this is insane. You cannot possibly be thinking about going through with the wedding after what just happened. You need to be calling lawyers, documenting everything, preparing for war." "I am preparing for war," I replied, turning back to face my wedding party. "But not the kind they're expecting. Claire, what would happen if I tried to fight this through? Legal channels?" My sister's expression grew grim. Wrongful termination cases are notoriously difficult to win, especially when they involve allegations of intellectual property theft or breach of contract. Even if you eventually prevailed, which is far from certain, you'd be tied up in litigation for years. Your reputation would be destroyed, your finances would be drained, and by the time it was resolved, your career would be over anyway. Exactly. They chose their weapons carefully. Traditional legal recourse would be a slow death by 1,000 cuts. I sat down at the vanity where my makeup artist had been waiting patiently for over an hour. But they made one critical miscalculation. Kayla set down the steamer and looked at me with curiosity. "What kind of miscalculation?" "They assumed that terminating me would eliminate the threat I represented. They thought that by destroying my reputation at Pinnacle, they'd neutralize my ability to compete in the marketplace." I opened my laptop, which I'd grabbed from my car before coming back upstairs. What they don't realize is that over the past 18 months, while they were focused on office politics and corporate ladder climbing, I've built something that makes their little agency look like a lemonade stand. The screen displayed the client dashboard for Stellar Digital Strategies, showing real-time performance metrics for 47 active accounts. Revenue numbers, conversion rates, client satisfaction scores, and growth trajectories that would have impressed even Mark Davidson's profit-obsessed sensibilities. Lisa leaned over my shoulder, her anger gradually shifting to amazement. "Sarah, these numbers are incredible. How did you build all this while working full-time at Pinnacle?" "Nights, weekends, early mornings, lunch breaks, every spare moment, for 18 months. I scrolled through the client list, each name representing not just a business relationship, but a personal connection built on trust and results. Remember when I kept declining girls' nights out? When I stopped dating for 6 months before I met David? When I was always tired but claimed I was just stressed about work? You were building a competing business empire, Claire said, her legal mind clearly impressed by the strategic implications. And now that they've terminated you, there's no non-compete clause that can touch these relationships. Precisely. Because every single one of these clients falls below Pinnacle's minimum contract threshold. They're companies that traditional agencies like Pinnacle wouldn't even return phone calls from. But they're also companies with massive growth potential that other agencies have completely overlooked. I clicked on the Cascade Coffee Company file, displaying their transformation from 3 struggling locations to a 12-store chain with an e-commerce platform generating 40% of their total revenue. Tom Bradley from Northwest Tech Industries has been complaining for months about Pinnacle's impersonal account management. Patricia Yamamoto from Summit Financial Group specifically asked me 3 weeks ago if I ever did independent consulting, because she was frustrated with her current agency's lack of innovation. Holy shit, Kayla whispered, then immediately covered her mouth. Sorry, I know it's your wedding day, but Sarah, you're sitting on a gold mine. The best part is that Ryan Mitchell's investigation actually documented my business activities in ways that prove I never violated any company policies. He tracked my coffee shop meetings, my after-hours phone calls, my weekend client visits, all of which establishes a clear timeline showing that I built stellar digital strategies completely, independently of my Pinnacle work. Lisa was scrolling through client testimonials on my laptop, her expression shifting from protective anger to strategic excitement. These people love you. I mean, really love you. Listen to this one from the CEO of Pacific Northwest Wellness. Sarah Chen doesn't just understand digital marketing, she understands business growth. Her strategies have transformed our company in ways we never thought possible. She's not just a consultant, she's a true business partner. And here's the beautiful irony, I continued, feeling energized for the first time since walking into that conference room. By firing me today, Pinnacle Marketing Solutions has just freed me to compete with them directly. No transition period, no gradual client migration, no ethical concerns about soliciting business while employed elsewhere. They've essentially handed me a clean slate and a righteous anger that's going to fuel the most aggressive business expansion they've ever seen. My phone buzzed with a text from David. Everything okay? Lisa said there was a work emergency, but you haven't answered my calls. Getting a little nervous over here. I smiled for the first time that morning, realizing that I was about to marry not just the love of my life, but the perfect business partner for what I was planning. David's software engineering background and his startup experience would be invaluable as I scaled stellar digital strategies into a serious competitor. Claire, I need you to help me document everything that happened this morning while it's fresh in my memory. Not for a lawsuit, but for leverage. I opened a new document on my laptop. Lisa, I need you to help me draft a communication strategy for reaching out to potential clients who might be interested in switching agencies. Wait! Lisa held up her hands. You're planning to destroy your former employer's business empire while getting your hair and makeup done for your wedding? Sarah, I love your confidence, but shouldn't we focus on one life-changing event at a time? This is the perfect time, I replied, surprised by how clear my thinking had become. I'm already in crisis mode. I have my entire support network in one room, and I have 6 hours before I need to walk down the aisle. Plus, the emotional clarity of being betrayed by people I trusted has eliminated any lingering doubts about whether I'm ready to compete at this level. Kayla, who worked in public relations for a tech startup, looked up from my client dashboard with professional interest. Sarah, if you're serious about this, you need to think about timing and messaging. Right now, you're operating from a position of strength because you're the victim of obvious corporate misconduct. But that advantage won't last long. What do you mean? I mean that by Monday morning, Ryan Mitchell and his allies will be working to control the narrative. They'll be calling your clients, spreading rumors about why you were terminated, trying to damage your relationships before you can leverage them. You have maybe 72 hours before their version of events becomes the accepted truth. Claire nodded grimly. From a legal perspective, Kayla's right. Even though their allegations are fabricated, the fact that you were terminated for cause will be used to undermine your credibility. You need to get ahead of this story immediately. I stood up, pacing the length of the bridal suite as my mind raced through possibilities and strategies. Then we move fast, faster than they expect and harder than they can handle. I reach out to my existing Stellar Digital clients today, before word of my termination spreads. I contact potential new clients who have expressed interest in switching agencies, and I make it clear that I'm now available full-time to deliver the kind of personalized service that Pinnacle can't match. On your wedding day, Lisa's voice carried a mix of admiration and concern. Especially on my wedding day, because there's something poetic about starting my new life and my new business on the same day. Plus, David and I are leaving for our honeymoon in Maui tomorrow, which gives me 2 weeks to let the initial shockwaves settle while I plan my next moves from a distance. My makeup artist, Maria Santos, who had been listening to this entire conversation while setting up her equipment, finally spoke up. Honey, I've been doing wedding makeup for 15 years, and I've seen brides deal with every kind of crisis you can imagine. Family drama, venue disasters, runaway grooms, financial emergencies. But I've never seen a bride plan a corporate takeover while getting ready for her ceremony. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I asked, settling into the makeup chair. It's a badass thing, Maria replied with a grin. And if you're serious about looking powerful and confident in your wedding photos, I'm going to make sure you look like the CEO you're about to become. As Maria began working on my makeup, I opened my email on my phone and began crafting the most important message of my professional life. The subject line read, "Exciting transition, Stellar Digital Strategies now full service." The body of the email was carefully crafted to convey confidence, professionalism, and availability without directly attacking Pinnacle or revealing the circumstances of my departure. Dear valued client, I began typing. I'm thrilled to inform you that Stellar Digital Strategies is transitioning to a full-service digital marketing agency, allowing me to dedicate my complete attention to helping your business achieve its growth objectives. This change enables me to offer expanded services, more flexible scheduling, and the personalized attention that your success deserves. Lisa read over my shoulder, offering suggestions for tone and clarity. This is perfect, professional, positive, and it positions your termination as a strategic business decision rather than a crisis response. The key is to reach my existing clients before Pinnacle realizes what's happening, I explained, attaching case studies and performance reports to the email. Most of these business owners have no idea that I worked for another agency. They think Stellar Digital Strategies was always my primary focus. Claire looked up from her laptop where she'd been researching corporate espionage laws and wrongful termination precedents. Sarah, I hate to be the voice of caution here, but you need to be careful about how you position this. If Pinnacle decides to pursue legal action, they'll scrutinize every communication you send today. That's why I'm being completely truthful. I'm not bad-mouthing Pinnacle, I'm not soliciting their clients, and I'm not revealing any proprietary information. I'm simply informing my existing clients that my availability has increased. I hit send on the email, watching it disappear into the digital ether, carrying my professional future with it. Over the next hour, as Maria transformed my face with the kind of makeup artistry that made you look like yourself, but impossibly more radiant, I sent personalized messages to each of my 47 Stellar Digital clients. Each email was customized based on my knowledge of their business challenges, growth objectives, and communication preferences. To Tom Bradley at Northwest Tech Industries, I wrote, Tom, I know you've been frustrated with the impersonal account management you've been receiving lately. I'm now in a position to offer you the kind of dedicated, strategic partnership that a company of your caliber deserves. Would you be interested in discussing how we could work together more closely? To Patricia Yamamoto at Summit Financial. Group. Patricia, remember when you asked if I did independent consulting? Well, the timing has worked out perfectly. I'm now available to focus exclusively on helping growth-oriented companies like Summit Financial achieve their digital marketing objectives. I'd love to schedule a conversation about your expansion plans. Each message was designed to open a conversation rather than make a hard sales pitch. I was planting seeds that could grow into business relationships worth millions in annual revenue, but I was doing it with the finesse of someone who understood that the best business development feels like relationship building rather than aggressive marketing. My phone started buzzing with responses almost immediately. Tom Bradley replied within minutes. Sarah, this is exactly what I've been hoping for. Can we schedule a call for Monday morning? I've been thinking about making some changes. In our agency relationships, Patricia Yamamoto's response was even more encouraging. Perfect timing. I was literally just discussing with my team how we need a more innovative approach to our digital presence. Let's definitely talk about working together. Lisa watched. The responses pile up with growing amazement. Sarah, these people are practically throwing business at you. How did you build such strong relationships while working for someone else? By treating every client interaction like it mattered, regardless of the size of their contract or their potential for future business. Pinnacle trained us to prioritize clients based on their current revenue contribution. I prioritized them based on their potential for mutual success. I paused to let Maria apply lipstick in a shade called Power Red that seemed perfectly appropriate for the occasion. Plus, I genuinely cared about their success in ways that went beyond just delivering marketing services. I studied their industries, understood their competitive landscapes, and provided strategic advice that helped them grow their businesses. When you do that consistently for 18 months, you build relationships that transcend normal vendor-client dynamics. Kayla looked up from where she'd been researching Pinnacle Marketing Solutions' public client list on her laptop. Speaking of competitive landscapes, you might want to see this. Pinnacle's website lists their major clients, and I'm seeing some interesting patterns. She turned her screen toward me, displaying Pinnacle's client portfolio page. The list included several companies that I knew were dissatisfied with their current service levels, based on conversations I'd had at industry networking events and business conferences. See here? Meridian Healthcare Systems, Westport Financial, Columbia River Logistics. I remember you mentioning that you'd met executives from these companies who complained about their current agency relationships. You're right. Jennifer Walsh at Meridian Healthcare told me at the Seattle Business Journal's annual awards dinner that she was frustrated with agencies that promised innovation but delivered recycled strategies. Marcus Chen at Westport Financial said during the Digital Marketing Summit that he felt like his agency treated them as just another account rather than a strategic partner. Claire looked up from her legal research with a predatory smile that reminded me why she'd become such an effective attorney. So you're telling me that Pinnacle's client list essentially doubles as your prospect list? In many cases, yes. Because the same factors that make companies attractive to Pinnacle also make them good candidates for the kind of personalized service that stellar digital strategies can provide. The difference is that I can offer senior-level attention to every account, while Pinnacle assigns junior account managers to anyone who isn't generating 7 figures in annual fees. My phone rang, and I recognized the number as belonging to Michael Torres, CEO of Evergreen Construction Management, one of my stellar digital clients whose business had grown by 200% under my guidance. Sarah, I just got your email, and I have to tell you, this is the best news I've heard all week. Michael's voice carried genuine excitement. We've been talking about expanding our digital marketing efforts, but we needed someone who really understands our business. The fact that you're now available full-time is exactly what we need. Michael, I'm so glad you're interested. What kind of expansion are you thinking about? We're opening operations in Portland and Vancouver, and we need someone who can help us establish our brand presence in those markets. We're talking about a significant investment in digital advertising, content marketing, social media management, the whole package. Are you equipped to handle something like that? I caught Lisa's eye and saw her making frantic hand gestures indicating that this was a huge opportunity. Absolutely. I've been preparing for exactly this kind of growth-focused engagement. Why don't we schedule a detailed conversation for early next week so I can present some strategic options? Perfect. And Sarah? Whatever they were paying you at your old job, we'll double it. You've completely transformed our business, and we want to make sure you're properly compensated for that level of impact. After ending the call, I sat in stunned silence for a moment. In the span of 2 hours, I'd gone from being unemployed and potentially unemployable to having clients actively competing to increase my compensation. Did he just offer to double your salary? Kayla asked, her public relations background making her particularly attuned to the business implications of what was happening. It's better than that. He offered to double what he thought my salary was, which means he's probably willing to pay significantly more than I was actually making at Pinnacle. Plus, if Evergreen Construction is expanding into 2 new markets, we're talking about a contract worth at least $500,000 annually. Lisa grabbed my hands, her excitement overriding her earlier concerns about timing. Sarah, this is incredible. You're not just surviving this termination, you're using it as a launching pad for something much bigger. The momentum is building exactly like I hoped it would. I agreed, watching more email responses appear on my phone. Each positive response gives me confidence to reach out to more potential clients. Each new business opportunity validates my decision to compete directly with Pinnacle rather than trying to fight them through legal channels. Maria finished my makeup and stepped back to admire her work. Honey, you look absolutely radiant. But more importantly, you look like someone who just took control of her destiny. I looked in the mirror and saw someone I almost didn't recognize. Not because of the professional makeup, but because of the expression in my eyes. The uncertainty and self-doubt that had plagued me throughout my corporate career had been replaced by steely determination and quiet confidence. You know what the best part is? I said, standing up to let Kayla help me into my wedding dress. By this time next year, Ryan Mitchell is going to realize that terminating me was the worst strategic decision of his career. Because instead of eliminating a potential competitor, he's created one. And instead of protecting Pinnacle's market position, he's handed their biggest growth opportunity to someone who has every reason to destroy them. Claire saved her legal research and closed her laptop. Sarah, I have to ask, are you sure you want to do this? Building a business empire is hard enough under normal circumstances. Doing it while competing against your former employer, who has every incentive to sabotage your efforts, is going to be brutal. I'm absolutely sure, I replied without hesitation. Because this isn't just about business anymore. It's about proving that talent and integrity can triumph over corporate politics and character assassination. It's about showing every woman who's ever been dismissed or underestimated that we don't have to accept other people's limitations. Plus, I added with a smile that felt more genuine than any I'd managed all day, I'm about to marry the love of my life, surrounded by the most supportive people I've ever known, with a business plan that could make me financially independent. Within 2 years. Even if this morning was the worst professional experience of my life, this afternoon is shaping up to be pretty spectacular. As if summoned by my mention of him, my phone buzzed with a text from David. Whatever happened, this morning, we'll figure it out together. Can't wait to marry you in 3 hours. Love you more than all the code in GitHub. I laughed out loud, remembering why I'd fallen in love with a software engineer who expressed affection through programming metaphors. David Chen was not only the perfect romantic partner, but he was also exactly the business partner I needed for what I was about to build. All right, ladies, I announced. feeling energized and focused in ways I hadn't experienced since college. Let's get me married so I can start my new life as an entrepreneur, a wife, and the biggest competitive threat that Pinnacle Marketing Solutions has ever faced. The wedding dress fit perfectly, the makeup was flawless, and the woman in the mirror looked ready to conquer both marriage and the Seattle digital marketing industry. As we prepared to leave for the ceremony, I realized that Ryan Mitchell's corporate assassination had actually been the best thing that could have happened to me. He'd set me free to build something extraordinary, and I was about to show him exactly what extraordinary looked like. The drive from the Fairmont Olympic Hotel to St. Mark's Cathedral gave me 20 minutes to process the complete transformation my life had undergone in the span of a single morning. Lisa sat beside me in the limousine, holding my hand while I watched Seattle's Capitol Hill neighborhood roll past the windows. The city looked exactly the same as it had 12 hours earlier, but I felt like I was seeing it through completely different eyes. "Are you nervous?" Lisa asked, and I realized she wasn't asking about the wedding ceremony we were approaching, but about the business war I'd just declared on my former employer. "Terrified," I admitted, surprising myself with the honesty. "But it's the good kind of terrified. The kind that means you're about to do something that could change everything." My phone had been buzzing constantly with responses to the emails I'd sent from the bridal suite. By the time we arrived at the cathedral, 17 of my 47 stellar digital clients had replied with enthusiasm about expanded service offerings. 3 had specifically mentioned their dissatisfaction with their current primary agencies. 2 had requested immediate meetings to discuss significantly larger contracts. But the response that had stopped me cold came from an unexpected source. Elena Rodriguez, Chief Marketing Officer at North Star Aerospace, one of Pinnacle's largest accounts. Elena and I had never worked together directly, but we'd met at several industry conferences where she'd impressed me with her strategic thinking and innovative approaches to B2B marketing. Her email was brief, but loaded with implications. "Sarah, I heard through the grapevine that you're now available for independent consulting. North Star has been evaluating our agency relationships, and I'd be very interested in discussing our needs with someone of your caliber. Are you taking on new clients?" I stared at the message, realizing that word of my termination was already spreading through Seattle's tight-knit marketing community. But instead of the damage control I'd expected, the news seemed to be generating interest from exactly the kind of high-value prospects I needed to establish stellar digital strategies as a serious competitor. "Lisa, look at this," I said, showing her Elena's email. "She's offering me a chance to compete for one of Pinnacle's biggest accounts. Is that legal? I mean, ethically speaking?" "Completely." Elena reached out to me, not the other way around. And if North Star Aerospace is evaluating their agency relationships, they have every right to consider alternative providers. I paused, considering the implications. Plus, there's no non-compete clause that applies to clients who approach me directly. The limousine pulled up to St. Mark's Cathedral, and I could see David waiting on the steps in his perfectly tailored tuxedo, flanked by his groomsmen and looking slightly nervous but absolutely radiant. For a moment, all thoughts of business strategy and competitive positioning faded away, replaced by pure joy at the sight of the man I was about to marry. "Ready to do this?" Lisa asked, helping me arrange my dress and veil before stepping out of the car. "More ready than I've ever been for anything in my life," I replied, and I realized I was talking about both the wedding and the business empire I was about to build. The ceremony itself passed in a blur of tradition, emotion, and perfectly coordinated logistics that my wedding planner had orchestrated with military precision. David's vows brought tears to my eyes, particularly when he promised to support my dreams even when they seemed impossible to everyone else. My own vows felt especially meaningful given the morning's events, as I promised to choose courage over comfort and to build a life together that reflected our shared values of integrity and ambition. But throughout the beautiful ritual of marriage, Part of my mind remained focused on the strategic opportunities that were developing with each passing hour. During the receiving line after the ceremony, I was amazed by how many guests mentioned hearing about my exciting career transition and expressed interest in learning more about my new business focus. Jennifer Walsh from Meridian Healthcare, who was attending as David's college roommate's wife, pulled me aside during the cocktail hour. "Sarah, I don't know if this is appropriate timing, but I heard you're now doing independent consulting. We've been incredibly frustrated with our current agency's lack of innovation. Would you be interested in discussing our needs?" Before I could respond, Marcus Chen from Westport Financial appeared at my elbow. "Did someone mention consulting? Sarah, if you're taking on new clients, we need to talk. Our current agency treats us like we're lucky to have their attention. And frankly, we're ready for a change." Standing there in my wedding dress, holding a glass of champagne and surrounded by the soft glow of string lights in the Bellevue Country Club ballroom, I realized I was inadvertently hosting the most effective business development event of my career. My wedding reception was turning into a networking opportunity that could establish Stellar Digital Strategies as a major player in the Seattle market. "You know what?" I said to Jennifer and Marcus. "Why don't you both give me your cards, and I'll call you early next week? I'd love to learn more about your challenges and see if there might be ways we could work together." As they walked away, clearly pleased with the prospect of exploring new agency relationships, Lisa appeared beside me with a knowing look. "Please tell me you're not turning your wedding reception into a client acquisition strategy." "I'm not turning it into anything," I replied with a laugh. "But if people are approaching me with legitimate business opportunities, I'd be crazy not to explore them." David joined us, wrapping his arm around my waist and looking happier than I'd ever seen him. "Mrs. Chen," he said, testing out my new name. "Are you conducting business meetings at our wedding reception?" "Only when absolutely necessary," I replied, kissing him softly. "And speaking of business, I have something to tell you about my morning that's going to change our entire financial future." Over dinner, as our guests enjoyed the salmon and risotto that had taken months to select, I quietly briefed David on the morning's events and the opportunities that were already emerging. His initial shock at my termination quickly gave way to excitement as he understood the strategic implications. "So you're telling me that by firing you, they've actually created the perfect conditions for you to compete against them directly?" David's software engineering background made him naturally analytical about systems and processes. "Exactly. And not only that, but the timing gives us a unique advantage. We're leaving for Maui tomorrow, which means I can spend our honeymoon developing a comprehensive business plan while letting the initial shockwaves from my termination settle in the market. Plus," David added with the kind of strategic thinking that reminded me why I'd fallen in love with him, "my startup experience means I can help you build the technical infrastructure you'll need to scale rapidly. Customer relationship management, systems, project management tools, financial tracking, automated marketing processes." I stared at my new husband, realizing that I'd just gained not only a life partner, but also the perfect co-founder for what was about to become the most ambitious business venture of my career. "David Chen," I said, "how would you feel about helping me build a company that could revolutionize how digital marketing services are delivered in the Pacific Northwest?" "Sarah Chen," he replied with a grin that lit up his entire face. I thought, you'd never ask. As the evening progressed and our guests celebrated around us, David and I found quiet moments to discuss the practical aspects of what we were planning. By the time we cut the cake, we'd outlined a rough timeline for expanding Stellar Digital Strategies from a one-person consulting operation into a full-service agency capable of competing with established players like Pinnacle. The key insight came during our first dance as we swayed to "At Last" by Etta James, and I caught sight of Ryan Mitchell's face in my peripheral vision. He'd attended the wedding as Jessica Thompson's +1, and his expression suggested he was beginning to understand that my termination might not have played out exactly as he'd planned. "He looks nervous," David murmured in my ear. He should be, I replied. Because tomorrow morning, while we're flying to Hawaii, he's going to wake up and realize that instead of eliminating a potential competitor, he's created one. And instead of protecting Pinnacle's market position, he's handed me the motivation and freedom I needed to destroy them. The final validation of my strategy came during the bouquet toss. As I stood with my back to the crowd of single women, preparing to launch my wedding bouquet into the air, I caught Elena Rodriguez's eye. She mouthed the words, "Call me," and held up her business card. I threw the bouquet high into the air, watching it arc over the heads of my unmarried friends and land in the hands of my cousin Rebecca, who squealed with delight. But my attention was focused on Elena Rodriguez, who represented the potential to land a contract worth more than my entire Pinnacle salary. As the reception wound down and guests began departing with well wishes and promises to stay in touch, I realized that my wedding day had become the launching pad for something much bigger than a marriage. It had become the foundation for a business empire that would be built on the ashes of my corporate career. Lisa helped me change out of my wedding dress and into my going-away outfit, a classic navy dress that seemed appropriate for both celebrating my marriage and preparing for corporate warfare. "I have to ask," she said as she carefully packed my dress in its preservation box. "Are you sure you're ready for what you're about to take on? Building a business is hard enough without the added pressure of competing against people who have every reason to want you to fail." "I've never been more sure of anything," I replied, checking my phone one last time before we left for the airport. 3 more emails had arrived from potential clients, including one from a company I'd never heard of that had gotten my contact information from Tom Bradley at Northwest Tech Industries. "Besides," I added with a smile that felt both fierce and joyful, "they made one critical mistake when they decided to destroy my career on my wedding day." "What's that?" "They gave me the perfect love story to pair with my revenge story. And everyone loves a bride who refuses to be broken." As David and I climbed into the limousine that would take us to Seattle-Tacoma International Airport for our honeymoon flight, I looked back at the Bellevue Country Club where our guests were still celebrating. In 12 hours, I'd been terminated from my corporate job, married the love of my life, and laid the groundwork for a business venture that could make me financially independent within 2 years. "Ready for the honeymoon, Mrs. Chen?" David asked, taking my hand as the limousine pulled away from the curb. "Ready for everything that comes next, Mr. Chen," I replied, settling back against the leather seats and opening my laptop to review the business opportunities that had emerged during our wedding reception. The war with Pinnacle Marketing Solutions would begin when we returned from Maui. But the foundation for victory had been laid on the same day I'd promised to love, honor, and cherish the perfect business partner for life. The first-class cabin of Hawaiian Airlines Flight 25 to Maui provided the perfect environment for strategic planning. While other passengers settled in for the 5-hour flight with movies and magazines, I spread business documents across the tray table and began mapping out the most aggressive market expansion strategy I'd ever conceived. David sat beside me, with his laptop open, already sketching wireframes for the customer management system we'd need to handle the influx of clients I was targeting. "Okay, walk me through the math," David said, pulling up a spreadsheet that displayed our current financial position alongside projected revenue scenarios. "You have 47 existing Stellar Digital clients generating approximately $180,000 in annual revenue. You're confident you can convert at least 30 of them to expanded service packages. What kind of revenue increase are we talking about?" I pulled out the client analysis I'd been working on since takeoff, cross-referencing each business with their growth potential and budget capacity. Conservative estimate, we're looking at an average contract value increase of 300%. Companies like Cascade Coffee and Pacific Northwest Wellness have been asking for expanded services for months, but I couldn't deliver them while maintaining my Pinnacle obligations. So we're talking about existing clients alone generating approximately $540,000 annually under expanded service packages, David calculated, his engineering mind automatically processing the numbers. That's already 3 times your Pinnacle salary. And that's before we factor in the new business opportunities that emerged during our wedding reception, I added, pulling up the contact information for Elena Rodriguez, Jennifer Walsh, and Marcus Chen. If I can land even 2 of those accounts, we're looking at additional revenue of $200,000 to $400,000 annually. David leaned back in his seat, a slow smile spreading across his face. Sarah, do you realize what you're describing? Within 12 months, you could be running a business that generates more revenue than most mid-sized agencies. The timeline might be even shorter than that, I replied, opening Elena Rodriguez's LinkedIn profile to research North Star Aerospace's marketing challenges. The key is understanding that I'm not starting from zero. I have 18 months of proven results, established client relationships, and a reputation for delivering outcomes that traditional agencies can't match. The flight attendant offered us champagne to celebrate our honeymoon, and as we toasted our new marriage 35,000 feet above the Pacific Ocean, I realized we were also toasting the birth of what could become Seattle's most innovative digital marketing agency. There's something else to consider, David said, pulling up market research on his laptop. The timing of your termination actually works in our favor from a competitive positioning standpoint. Pinnacle is going to spend the next several months dealing with the disruption of losing their top account manager. They'll be scrambling to maintain client relationships, reassign responsibilities, and manage the narrative around your departure. While I'll be using that same period to establish stellar digital strategies as the preferred alternative for clients who value personalized service and innovative thinking, I finished. They'll be playing defense while I go on offense. Exactly. Plus, Ryan Mitchell's investigation of your activities has essentially provided us with a detailed competitive analysis. He documented your client meeting schedules, your business development activities, and your relationship-building strategies, all of which proves that your approach generates better results than Pinnacle's traditional agency model. I laughed, remembering Ryan's smug expression as he'd presented his folder of evidence during my termination meeting. He thought he was building a case against me, but he was actually creating a blueprint for how to compete against Pinnacle more effectively than they compete against themselves. The remainder of the flight was spent developing what we came to call the honeymoon business plan, a comprehensive strategy for transforming stellar digital strategies from a side business into a full-service agency capable of challenging established players in the Seattle market. By the time we landed in Kahului, we had outlined everything from staffing requirements to technology infrastructure to competitive positioning. Our resort in Wailea was stunning, with an oceanfront suite that provided panoramic views of the Pacific and a private lanai where we could work during the early morning hours before the heat became too intense. The time difference worked perfectly for maintaining communication with Seattle-based clients while giving us the psychological distance needed for strategic thinking. The first morning of our honeymoon, I woke before sunrise and settled on the Chia lanai with my laptop and a cup of Kona coffee, ready to begin what would become the most productive 2 weeks of my professional life. The sound of waves breaking on the beach provided a surprisingly effective soundtrack for business planning, and the tropical setting gave me a sense of perspective that would have been impossible to achieve in Seattle. My email inbox contained responses from 6 more potential clients, including a message from Robert Kim at Velocity Ventures, a venture capital firm that was looking for an agency to help their portfolio companies with digital marketing strategy. The contract potential was enormous, as it could lead to relationships with dozens of growing businesses that needed exactly the kind of agile, results-focused service that stellar digital strategies could provide. David, look at this, I called, to my husband, who was setting up his own workspace at the outdoor dining table. Velocity Ventures wants to discuss a partnership that could give us access to their entire portfolio of companies. He joined me on the lanai, reading the email over my shoulder while sipping his own coffee. Sarah, this is huge. Venture capital firms typically work with the most prestigious agencies in the market. If they're approaching you, it means you're Reputation has reached a level where you're being considered alongside players like Pinnacle. Or it means that Elena Rodriguez has been talking to people in her network about our conversation at the wedding reception, I replied, noting that Robert Kim's email mentioned hearing about my work from a mutual contact in the aerospace industry. Either way, it's validation that your strategy is working. Word is spreading through Seattle's business community that you're available and that you deliver results other agencies can't match. I spent the next hour crafting a response to Robert Kim that struck the perfect balance between confidence and professionalism. I outlined Stellar Digital Strategy's approach to working with high-growth companies, provided case studies from my existing portfolio, and suggested a conversation to explore how we might support Velocity Ventures' portfolio development objectives. The key is positioning this not as a vendor relationship, but as a strategic partnership, I explained to David as I refined the language. Venture capital firms don't just want marketing services for their companies. They want partners who can help increase the valuation of their investments. Which means proving that your marketing strategies directly contribute to business growth rather than just increasing brand awareness, David added, his startup experience giving him insight into how investors evaluated marketing effectiveness. Exactly. And that's where my track record with companies like Cascade Coffee and Pacific Northwest Wellness becomes incredibly valuable. I can demonstrate actual business growth, not just marketing metrics. After sending the response to Robert Kim, I turned my attention to developing proposals for the 3 high-value prospects who had expressed interest during our wedding reception. Each proposal needed to be customized based on the specific challenges and opportunities facing their businesses, which required research into their competitive landscapes, growth strategies, and current marketing effectiveness. Elena Rodriguez at Northstar Aerospace presented the most complex opportunity. As a major aerospace manufacturer with contracts across both commercial and defense sectors, their marketing needs were sophisticated and highly regulated. Traditional agencies often struggled with the technical complexity and compliance requirements of aerospace marketing, which created an opening for someone with my strategic background and attention to detail. I spent 2 hours researching Northstar's recent announcements, industry positioning, and competitive challenges. Their primary marketing challenge seemed to be differentiating themselves in a crowded market while building relationships with key decision-makers in both commercial aviation and defense procurement. My proposal focused on developing integrated marketing campaigns that could navigate the complex regulatory environment while generating measurable business development results. This is either going to be the most lucrative contract of my career or a complete disaster, I told David as I finished drafting the Northstar proposal. There's no middle ground with clients this sophisticated. Based on everything I've seen over the past 24 hours, I'm betting on lucrative, David replied, reviewing the proposal with his characteristic analytical precision. You're not just offering marketing services, you're offering business strategy that happens to include marketing execution. The proposal to Jennifer Walsh at Meridian Healthcare required a completely different approach. Healthcare marketing was heavily regulated, with strict compliance requirements and ethical considerations that many agencies handled poorly. But it was also an industry where effective marketing could literally save lives by connecting patients with life-changing treatments and services. My research revealed that Meridian Healthcare was expanding into new therapeutic areas while trying to build stronger relationships with both healthcare providers and patients. The marketing challenge was communicating complex medical information in ways that were both accurate and accessible, while navigating the regulatory constraints that governed healthcare advertising. The healthcare proposal is actually more challenging than the aerospace one, I explained to David as we took a break to walk on the beach. With aerospace, you're selling to sophisticated buyers who understand technical specifications. With healthcare, you're often communicating with people who are scared, confused, and dealing with life-changing medical decisions. But that's also where your approach creates the most value, David pointed out. Traditional agencies treat healthcare marketing like any other industry. You're treating it like what it is, a human service that requires empathy and precision in equal measure. The proposal to Marcus Chen at Westport Financial was the most straightforward of the three, focusing on the growing fintech sector where innovative marketing could create significant competitive advantages. Financial services marketing required a combination of regulatory compliance, technical accuracy, and trust building that many agencies struggled to deliver effectively. By the end of our third day in Maui, I had sent customized proposals to all three prospects, each one positioned as a strategic partnership rather than a traditional vendor relationship. The proposals included detailed case studies from my existing portfolio, specific strategies for addressing their unique challenges, and pricing structures that reflected the high-value nature of the services I was offering. Now comes the hard part, I told David as we watched the sunset from our lanai, laptops finally closed for the day, waiting to see if they're as interested in working together as they seemed to be during our initial conversations. The waiting is definitely the hardest part, David agreed. But based on everything I've observed over the past few days, I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised by the responses you receive. He was right. Over the next week, all three prospects responded with enthusiasm and requests for detailed follow-up conversations. Elena Rodriguez wanted to schedule a presentation to Northstar's executive team. Jennifer Walsh requested a proposal for a comprehensive marketing audit that could lead to a long-term strategic partnership. Marcus Chen asked for a meeting to discuss Westport Financial's expansion plans and how Stellar Digital Strategies could support their growth objectives. David, I think we have a problem, I said on our 8th day in Maui, staring at my laptop, screen with a mixture of excitement and panic. Good problem or bad problem? Good problem, but potentially overwhelming problem. If even half of these opportunities convert into actual contracts, I'm going to need help. Lots of help. There's no way I can deliver this level of service as a one-person operation. David set down his book and gave me his full attention. Okay, let's think through this systematically. What kind of help do you need, and what's the timeline for bringing people on board? I pulled up my project management software, which was already straining under the weight of existing client commitments and new business opportunities. I need at least 2 senior-level strategists who can work directly with clients on campaign development. I need a project manager who can coordinate multiple complex campaigns simultaneously. I need a creative team that can produce high-quality content across multiple industries. And I need administrative support that can handle everything from client communication to financial management. So we're talking about scaling from a one-person operation to a team of 6 to 8 people within the next 6 months, David calculated. That's ambitious, but not impossible if you have the revenue to support it. The revenue projections support it, I replied, reviewing the financial models we'd developed during our flight to Hawaii. But the operational challenges are significant. Finding the right people, establishing the right culture, building the right systems to manage a distributed team. Those are exactly the kinds of challenges that my startup experience can help solve, David pointed out. I've been through rapid scaling before. I know how to build systems that can grow with a business, how to identify people who can thrive in a high-growth environment, and how to maintain quality while increasing capacity. I looked at my husband, realizing that I was about to make the most important business decision of our honeymoon. David Chen, how would you feel about becoming the Chief Technology Officer of Stellar Digital Strategies? I thought you'd never ask, he replied with the same grin that had made me fall in love with him 2 years earlier. When do we start? The remainder of our honeymoon was spent developing the operational infrastructure for what was rapidly becoming much more than a consulting business. We researched talent acquisition strategies, interviewed potential technology vendors via video conference, and created job descriptions for the key positions we'd need to fill immediately upon returning to Seattle. The key insight, David explained as we worked through organizational charts and reporting structures, is that we're not just building a traditional agency. We're building a technology-enabled service business that can deliver personalized attention at scale. What does that mean in practical terms? It means using automation and intelligent systems to handle routine tasks so that our human team members can focus on strategy, creativity, and relationship building. It means building data analytics capabilities that allow us to measure and optimize campaign performance in real time. It means creating communication tools that keep clients informed and engaged throughout the entire process. The vision that emerged during our honeymoon was revolutionary. A digital marketing agency that combined the personalized service of a boutique consultancy with the technological sophistication of a Silicon Valley startup. We would compete not just on results, but on the entire client experience, from initial consultation through campaign execution and ongoing optimization. This is either going to be the most successful agency launch in Seattle's history or the most spectacular failure, I said on our final evening in Maui, reviewing the comprehensive business plan we'd developed over 2 weeks of intensive collaboration. Based on everything I've learned about you over the past few days, David replied, I'm betting on spectacular success. As our plane lifted off from Kahului for the flight back to Seattle, I realized that my honeymoon had accomplished something I'd never expected. It had transformed a personal crisis into a business opportunity that could revolutionize how digital marketing services were delivered in the Pacific Northwest. Ryan Mitchell's corporate assassination had backfired in ways he could never have anticipated. Instead of destroying my career, he'd freed me to build something that could destroy his. Instead of protecting Pinnacle's market position, he'd created the perfect conditions for a competitor who had every advantage except mercy. The war for Seattle's digital marketing supremacy was about to begin, and I was returning from my honeymoon better armed than any of my former colleagues could have imagined. The bride who'd been fired for poor performance was about to show them what exceptional performance actually looked like. The Boeing 737 descended through Seattle's characteristic cloud cover, revealing the city I'd left as an unemployed bride and was returning to as the founder of what would soon become the most talked-about digital marketing agency in the Pacific Northwest. 2 weeks in Maui had transformed both my marriage and my business strategy, but nothing could have prepared me for what awaited in my email inbox as we taxied to the gate at SeaTac Airport. 43 new business inquiries, 17 from companies I'd never heard of, 12 from businesses that were currently Pinnacle clients, and 14 from organizations that had been referred by my existing Stellar Digital Strategies portfolio. The most shocking message came from Amanda Foster in Human Resources at Pinnacle Marketing Solutions, marked as urgent and sent just 6 hours earlier. Sarah, we need to discuss your departure circumstances. Several of our clients have requested to continue working with you specifically, and we're experiencing significant disruption to ongoing campaigns. Mark would like to explore the possibility of bringing you back as an independent contractor to maintain continuity on key accounts. Please call me immediately upon your return. I stared at the message, reading it 3 times before showing it to David. The irony was almost too perfect to process. The same company that had terminated me for fabricated performance issues was now begging me to return because their actual performance had collapsed in my absence. They're panicking, David observed, reading over my shoulder as we waited for our luggage at baggage claim. That message doesn't sound like a company that's confident in their decision to fire you. It sounds like a company that's realized they made a catastrophic mistake, I replied, scrolling through the other messages in my inbox. Look at this one from Tom Bradley at Northwest Tech Industries. Tom's email was diplomatically worded, but unmistakably clear. Sarah, Pinnacle has assigned a new account manager to our business, but we're not satisfied with the transition. The strategic understanding and innovative thinking that made our partnership so successful seems to have left with you. We'd like to discuss working with Stellar Digital Strategies directly. as we believe continuity of leadership is essential for achieving our growth objectives. Similar messages had arrived from Pacific Northwest Wellness, Summit Financial Group, and Cascade Coffee Company. Every single one expressed dissatisfaction with Pinnacle's post-departure service delivery and interest in transitioning their business to my independent agency. "David, this is better than I dared to hope," I said, pulling up a quick calculation on my phone. "If just half of these Pinnacle clients switch to Stellar Digital, we're looking at immediate revenue of over $800,000 annually. That's enough to hire a full team and establish ourselves as a major player in the market." "It's also enough to put Pinnacle in serious financial trouble," David pointed out. "Losing that much revenue in a single quarter could destabilize their entire operation." The drive from the airport to our Queen Anne apartment gave me time to process the magnitude of what was happening. Ryan Mitchell's character assassination hadn't just failed. It had created a domino effect that was threatening Pinnacle's viability as a business. By forcing me out, they'd eliminated the person who had been maintaining relationships with their most valuable clients. Those clients, feeling abandoned and underserved, were now actively seeking alternatives. "The beautiful thing," I explained to David as we unpacked our honeymoon luggage, "is that I don't have to do anything unethical or aggressive to compete with them. Their own service failures are driving clients to look for alternatives, and I just happen to be the most obvious alternative available." Our apartment felt different somehow, smaller and more temporary than it had before our trip. I realized that our living space would need to evolve rapidly to accommodate the business we were building. The spare bedroom that had served as my home office for Stellar Digital Strategies would soon be inadequate for the team we were planning to hire. "We're going to need a real office," I said, looking around our space with new eyes. "Somewhere professional enough to meet with clients like North Star Aerospace and Velocity Ventures, but flexible enough to accommodate rapid growth. I've been researching commercial real estate options while we were in Hawaii," David replied, pulling up listings on his laptop. "There are several interesting spaces in the South Lake Union area that would give us room to grow while keeping us connected to the tech community." My phone rang, interrupting our discussion about office space. The caller ID showed Elena Rodriguez from North Star Aerospace, and I realized this was the moment when our honeymoon planning would meet real-world execution. "Elena, how nice to hear from you," I answered, trying to project confidence while my heart raced with anticipation. "Sarah, I hope you had a wonderful honeymoon. I wanted to follow up on our conversation at your wedding reception. We've reviewed your proposal for North Star, and frankly, we're impressed. The executive team would like to meet with you next week to discuss moving forward with a strategic partnership." I caught David's eye and saw him give me an encouraging thumbs up. "That's wonderful news, Elena. I'm excited about the possibility of working together. What kind of timeline are you thinking about for implementation?" "We're looking at a pilot program that could begin within 30 days, with the potential for significant expansion based on initial results. The contract value we're discussing would be approximately $200,000 for the first 6 months, scaling to $400,000 annually if performance metrics are met." After ending the call, I sat in stunned silence for a moment. A single phone conversation had just generated more revenue potential than my entire Pinnacle salary. The validation was overwhelming, but so was the pressure to deliver results that would justify such significant investment. "Congratulations, CEO Chen," David said with a grin. "You just landed your first major contract." "We just landed our first major contract," I corrected. "I couldn't do this without your technical expertise and operational support." The next several hours were spent returning calls and emails from the various prospects and opportunities that had emerged during our absence. Jennifer Walsh at Meridian Healthcare wanted to schedule a presentation for the following week. Marcus Chen at Westport Financial was ready to move forward with a comprehensive marketing audit. Robert Kim at Velocity Ventures had scheduled me for a partner meeting that could lead to relationships with dozens of portfolio companies. Sarah, do you realize what's happening here? David asked as we worked through the responses together. You're not just building a consulting business. You're creating what could become the dominant digital marketing agency in Seattle within 12 months. The timeline might be even shorter than that, I replied, looking at the revenue projections that were developing from confirmed and potential contracts. If these opportunities convert at the rate I'm expecting, we'll need to scale much faster than we originally planned. My phone buzzed with another call, this time from a number I didn't recognize. The voice on the other end was crisp, professional, and unmistakably hostile. Sarah Chen, this is Ryan Mitchell from Pinnacle Marketing Solutions. I think we need to have a conversation about your recent business activities. The audacity of the call took my breath away. The man who had orchestrated my termination was now calling to discuss my business activities as if he had any right to comment on or influence my post-Pinnacle career. Ryan, I'm not sure what there is to discuss, I replied, keeping my voice level despite the anger that was building inside me. My business activities are completely independent of Pinnacle and don't concern you in any way. Actually, they do concern me. We have reason to believe you're soliciting Pinnacle clients in violation of your employment agreement, specifically the non-compete clause that prevents you from working with companies that were Pinnacle clients during your employment. I almost laughed out loud at the legal ignorance displayed in his threat. Ryan, you might want to consult with your legal department before making accusations like that. First, I was terminated for cause, which typically voids non-compete restrictions. Second, I haven't solicited any Pinnacle clients. They've approached me independently after being dissatisfied with the service they received following my departure. That's a convenient interpretation, but our legal team disagrees. We're prepared to pursue legal action if you continue to interfere with our client relationships. Please do, I replied, feeling a cold satisfaction settle over me. I'd love the opportunity to discuss in court how you manufactured evidence to justify my termination, and how your subsequent service failures drove clients to seek alternatives. I'm sure that would be fascinating for your remaining clients to read about in the legal filings. The silence on the other end of the call stretched for several seconds before Ryan spoke again, his voice noticeably less confident. Sarah, maybe we got off on the wrong foot. Amanda Foster mentioned that you might be interested in returning as an independent contractor. Perhaps we could find a way to work together that benefits everyone. Ryan, let me be completely clear about something. I wouldn't work with Pinnacle Marketing Solutions again under any circumstances. You had the opportunity to retain the most productive account manager in your company's history, and instead you chose to destroy my reputation based on fabricated allegations. Now you want to explore working together because your clients are abandoning you? That's not how business relationships work. You're making a mistake, Sarah. Pinnacle has resources and connections that you'll never be able to match as an independent operator. You're burning bridges that could be valuable for your future career. The only mistake was trusting people like you in the first place, I replied. And as for resources and connections, you might be surprised by what I've been able to accomplish in the 2 weeks since you terminated me. After ending the call, I felt a rush of clarity about the competitive landscape I was entering. Pinnacle wasn't just dealing with the loss of a single employee. They were dealing with the emergence of a direct competitor who had intimate knowledge of their weaknesses and unlimited motivation to exploit those weaknesses. That sounded intense, David observed, having listened to my side of the conversation with growing amazement. Ryan Mitchell just made the second worst strategic decision of his career, I replied. The first was firing me. The second was threatening me. Over the next 3 days, I worked 18-hour shifts to respond to the opportunities that were flooding in from multiple directions. The North Star Aerospace presentation was scheduled for Friday, with a potential contract signing the following week. Meridian Healthcare wanted to begin their marketing audit immediately, with full campaign implementation planned for the next month. Velocity Ventures had extended an invitation to present to their entire partnership team, with the possibility of becoming their preferred marketing vendor for all portfolio companies. "We need to hire people immediately," I told David as we reviewed the project timelines that we're developing. "There's no way I can deliver on all these commitments without significant additional talent." "I've been working on that," David replied, showing me a list of potential candidates he'd been researching. "Sarah Martinez from Zenith Creative is available and interested in a senior strategist role. Kevin Park, your former intern at Pinnacle, has reached out about joining our team. Lisa Rodriguez mentioned that she has connections in the nonprofit marketing world who might be interested in making a transition to corporate clients." The mention of Kevin Park surprised me. He'd been one of the brightest young talents at Pinnacle, with innovative ideas and exceptional work ethic that had made him valuable despite his junior status. The fact that he was interested in joining Stellar Digital Strategies suggested that word of my departure and subsequent success was spreading throughout Seattle's marketing community. "Kevin Park would be an incredible addition," I said, remembering his creative problem-solving abilities and his natural understanding of digital analytics. "But I'm surprised he'd be willing to leave Pinnacle for a startup agency." According to his message, the work environment at Pinnacle has become toxic since your departure. Ryan Mitchell has been taking credit for your client relationships while blaming service failures on the transition period. Several junior staff members are considering leaving because they're being scapegoated for problems they didn't create. The picture that emerged from Kevin's description was exactly what I'd hoped would happen. Pinnacle's internal culture was deteriorating as they struggled to maintain client relationships without the strategic leadership that had driven their recent success. Employee morale was declining, client satisfaction was plummeting, and senior management was engaging in exactly the kind of blame-shifting and credit-stealing that destroys organizational effectiveness. "David, I think we're witnessing the beginning of Pinnacle's collapse," I said, reviewing client defection reports that Kevin had discreetly shared. "They've lost 6 clients in 2 weeks, with several more threatening to terminate their contracts. Their revenue is down 30% from last quarter, and their pipeline of new business has essentially disappeared. Which creates the perfect environment for Stellar Digital Strategies to emerge as the preferred alternative," David pointed out. "We're not just competing against Pinnacle, we're filling the vacuum they're creating through their own incompetence." Friday morning arrived with the kind of crisp Seattle weather that made the city feel full of possibility. I stood in the conference room at North Star Aerospace, facing an executive team that represented the potential to establish Stellar Digital Strategies as a legitimate competitor to the largest agencies in the Pacific Northwest. Elena Rodriguez had arranged for me to present to the CEO, Chief Marketing Officer, and VP of Business Development, along with several senior managers who would be involved in campaign implementation. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, feeling more confident than I'd ever felt in any professional presentation. "I'm here today not just to propose marketing services, but to offer a partnership that will revolutionize how North Star Aerospace connects with your target markets." The presentation lasted 90 minutes and covered everything from competitive analysis to campaign strategy to performance measurement. But the moment that defined the entire meeting came when CEO Michael Chang asked about my background and experience with aerospace marketing. "Ms. Chen, your proposal demonstrates impressive understanding of our industry and challenges, but I have to ask about your previous experience. Your LinkedIn profile shows that you were employed by Pinnacle Marketing Solutions until very recently. Can you explain the circumstances of your departure?" I had anticipated this question and prepared an answer that was both honest and strategic. "Mr. Chang, I was terminated by Pinnacle for alleged performance issues that I believe were fabricated by a colleague who wanted to eliminate competition for advancement. Rather than spending months or years fighting that decision through legal channels, I decided to let my work speak for itself by building an independent agency that could deliver better results than traditional corporate structures allow. And how long have you been operating independently? Stellar Digital Strategies has been serving clients for 18 months, initially as evening and weekend work while I maintained my corporate position. The forced transition to full-time independence has actually accelerated our growth trajectory and allowed us to accept larger, more complex engagements, like the partnership we're discussing today. Elena Rodriguez spoke up from across the table. Michael, I've done extensive research on Sarah's track record. The client testimonials and performance metrics speak for themselves. Her results with companies like Cascade Coffee and Pacific Northwest Wellness demonstrate exactly the kind of growth-focused marketing strategy that Northstar needs. The discussion that followed was detailed, technical, and exactly the kind of strategic conversation that had been missing from my corporate career. These executives weren't interested in generic marketing proposals or cookie-cutter solutions. They wanted innovative strategies that could differentiate Northstar in competitive markets while generating measurable business results. Ms. Chen, said VP of Business Development Patricia Wu, your proposal includes performance guarantees that are significantly more aggressive than what we've seen from other agencies. Are you confident that you can deliver the results you're promising? I'm confident enough to stake my company's reputation on them, I replied. The performance guarantees aren't just marketing rhetoric. They're based on proven methodologies that have generated consistent results across multiple industries and client types. What happens if you don't meet the performance benchmarks? Then you terminate the contract without penalty, and I refund 100% of your investment. But based on everything I've learned about Northstar's market position and growth opportunities, I believe we'll exceed the benchmarks significantly. The meeting concluded with handshakes, business cards, and a commitment to have a final decision by the following Tuesday. As I walked back to my car, I felt a sense of professional accomplishment that had been missing throughout my corporate career. For the first time, I'd been able to present ideas and strategies without corporate bureaucracy, committee approvals, or the compromises that came with representing someone else's vision. David was waiting at a coffee shop near Northstar's offices, working on his laptop while monitoring my presentation progress through periodic text updates. How did it go? He asked, looking up as I slid into the chair across from him. I think we just landed our first major enterprise client, I replied, unable to suppress the grin that had been building since I left the conference room. The CEO specifically mentioned that my approach was more innovative and comprehensive than anything they'd seen from agencies 3 times our size. Including Pinnacle? Especially Pinnacle. Elena Rodriguez mentioned that they'd considered Pinnacle for this project, but decided their approach was too formulaic and impersonal. Over lunch, we discussed the operational implications of landing a contract the size of Northstar Aerospace. The account would require dedicated project management, specialized creative resources, and the kind of strategic oversight that could only come from senior-level talent. This is the inflection point, David said, reviewing the staffing requirements we'd outlined. If we land Northstar, Stellar Digital Strategies transitions from a consulting business to a legitimate agency. We'll need office space, formal HR policies, advanced technology infrastructure, and the kind of operational sophistication that can support enterprise-level clients. Are you ready for that kind of growth? I asked, suddenly aware of how dramatically our lives were about to change. Sarah, I've been waiting for an opportunity like this since I graduated from college. Building something from scratch with someone I love and trust completely? This is exactly what I want to be doing with my career. My phone rang as we walked back to our car, displaying Elena Rodriguez's number on the caller ID. Sarah, I wanted to call you immediately after the executive team meeting concluded, Elena said, her voice carrying unmistakable excitement. I'm pleased to inform you that Northstar Aerospace would like to move forward with the partnership we discussed. We're prepared to sign a contract for the full scope of services you proposed, with the performance guarantees and timeline we discussed. The moment felt surreal, like winning a lottery I'd been preparing my entire career to enter. 6 months earlier, I'd been a mid-level account manager struggling for recognition in a corporate hierarchy that valued politics over performance. Now I was the founder of an agency that had just landed one of the most prestigious clients in the Seattle market. Elena, that's wonderful news. I'm excited about the opportunity to work together and confident that we'll exceed your expectations. There's one additional element to discuss. Based on our conversation today, we'd like to expand the scope of our engagement to include strategic consulting for our expansion into international markets. That would increase the contract value to approximately $600,000 annually, with the potential for significant additional growth based on results. After ending the call, I stood on the sidewalk in downtown Seattle, looking up at the Columbia Center where I'd been terminated for poor performance just 3 weeks earlier. The irony was almost too perfect to process. The same week that Pinnacle Marketing Solutions had declared me professionally inadequate, I'd signed a contract worth more than 3 times my former salary. "David," I said, reaching for my husband's hand, "I think we're about to find out what happens when a failure refuses to stay failed." The drive home took us past the Bellevue Country Club, where we'd been married, and I thought about the woman who'd put on her wedding dress 3 weeks earlier, still believing that corporate loyalty and hard work would eventually be rewarded with recognition and advancement. That woman had been naive about the realities of office politics and power dynamics. The woman driving home from signing her first major enterprise contract understood that the only security came from building something that belonged to her completely. "Ryan Mitchell called this morning while you were in your presentation," David mentioned as we pulled into our apartment building's parking garage. "What did he want now?" "To inform you that Pinnacle is considering legal action for breach of contract and client solicitation." He mentioned something about cease and desist letters and intellectual property violations. I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in months. Let them try. I'd love to see Ryan Mitchell explain to a judge how terminating someone for fabricated performance issues entitles them to prevent that person from competing in the marketplace. Plus, now that you have North Star as a client, you have the financial resources to hire the best legal representation available if it comes to that. "It won't come to that," I replied with certainty, because Ryan Mitchell's legal threats are as empty as his management capabilities. He's panicking because his strategic miscalculation is destroying the company he was trying to protect. That evening, as David and I celebrated our business success and our marriage with dinner at our favorite restaurant overlooking Elliott Bay, I reflected on the unexpected journey that had brought us to this moment. 3 weeks earlier, I'd been fired on my wedding day for poor performance. Tonight, I was toasting the launch of what could become Seattle's most innovative digital marketing agency. "To revenge served at exactly the right temperature," David proposed, raising his glass of champagne. "To proving that sometimes the best response to betrayal is massive success," I replied, clinking my glass against his. As we walked home through the streets of Seattle, I thought about the email I would send to Amanda Foster at Pinnacle Marketing Solutions the next morning. Not a nasty message or a professional threat, but a simple note informing her that I would not be available for contract work because I was too busy building a company that would make Pinnacle irrelevant. The girl they'd called a failure for poor performance was about to show them what exceptional performance actually looked like. And the client list I'd taken with me was about to become the foundation for everything they'd never imagined I could achieve. The war for Seattle's digital marketing supremacy had begun, and I was winning before they even realized we were fighting. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.